Now, this AU was sort of quite a pleasant surprise. That's the best way to describe it because the first time you see the image or the title of Amazing Digital Circus Guardians AU, it completely throws you off because you're not sure you're into it, the art style, or even the title of this AU. But you start reading, you'll be surprised how into it you became because the concept is very interesting. In fact, how the best to describe it, or how the creator of this AU says, quoting Robert D, posting on his own Tumblr page saying, if anyone asks, this is between basically Ryoko and Reboot. And you just caught me there. You just grabbed me because you put that Pacific two shows together, and that's your inspiration of this sort of AU. You know what you're doing because those specific shows are so interesting because anime always attempted to recopy those ideas and kind of fail most of the part. Usually think of them as sort of kind of isekais, but not really, or Matrix way kind of ideas if you want to go that direction, because those of them fall in very specific, unique genres that there are not a lot of genres. Even anime attempted to fall to that genre, completely fails what to do with the two original Reboot and Kokuoko attempt to do, because it's sort of kind of stuck in a different universe, but sort of self-growing, self-evolving, self-improving, and realize you can't really change the situation you are. You just keep moving forward and become a better person. At least you try your sort of situation. Of course, I'm 100% sure some of you don't ever seen Reboot or Koryoko. Let me explain a few words. Reboot is basically people stuck in a sort of laptop or PC from the 90s. But specifically, you follow a character called Bob, who basically is a defender of this sort of universe inside the PC. But he only defends two type of creatures. One, the player, the person who plays games on his own PC. He's the one who has to beat you. If he doesn't, he destroys part of the whole city in his own world. The second threat is basically a virus who attempt to destroy the whole town and affect PC where he actually lives. And that's basically the whole plot. Sounds simple, but the unique thing about that cartoon, that Bob, our main lead, completely fails. I mean, he dies in the middle of the whole series, and sort of his little buddy took over. Even that he's not fully trained, the whole point is sort of he has to go training, but he never could make it because his teacher died, so he had to take his place. Unfortunately, it gets darker, it goes on. It's one of those that you don't expect when you're watching how silly it is, but the longer you keep watching, the darker it goes. And also, Koryoko, it's the same thing, but a little different. This is the comparison of sort of Matrix falls in, because it's all about a bunch of kids who go to the machine, this program called Koryoko. They have to save someone inside the program because one of them became sort of simp of one of the AI characters, not realizing this AI is a true person, but you don't know the backstory. But the only problem is they start playing the game. Every time they finish the game, they think it's over, but they get dragged back in because Ryoko is a very smart AI. The whole point of it is to destroy the whole world, but it resets every single time they defeat it. I mean, reset. They kind of go time traveling backwards for one day. So whatever problems they have that one point, they get resetted, and now they have to face the same problems, but they get a little bit more wiser every single time that happens. But they actually have sort of drama because they keep missing school, or the issue's not really resolved, or something like that. Something more meaningful. And this is why I mean that anime tried to do the same thing but failed that specific genre every single time because they follow the anime tropes, and the anime tropes don't follow the same logic as Reboot or Koryoko, because all both those specific shows is sort of growing up, sort of dealing with the issue, becoming more mature, more wiser, and that's the whole point. Reading that this specific AU from this specific artist, it really gets the idea. It really dives into it a very interesting, fun way. Of course, before I continue, my name is Rachel. I like to talk about animation, not just animation, the reviews, first impressions, cartoon theories, and sometimes, if I have some spare time, cartoon breaking news. Of course, you like how it's going, you like to help my channel, put a like, comment, and share. That's the only thing you need to do. If not, that's cool. But you do. Thank you, because of you, I'm getting close to my main goal of 2,000 subscribers. And yes, I'm getting close. Every single day, because people like you, people put like, comment, and share. Thank you. Now they get started of this sort of breakdown of what this AU is about. Now, how we gotta start this is basically tell the story, characters, and my thoughts at the very end. And the first story of this AU, basically you have to read a manga. Yes, this one has a comic book in this AU, a pretty decent long one. It feels a couple of chapters, not words, but it's completely worth reading because it's not that long, but it's very impactful. It's sort of a kind of, I don't want to say shonen jump, but it is sort of a action kind of manga, not words. But all of that, you follow basically Ken sort of explaining this world that is so interesting because this sort of AU explains they sort of live as sort of kind of like a bubble. This bubble has layers. Each layer fall into a completely different AU. Like for example, you do reference in this manga about sort of AU Funny Club of the Digital Circus. They also mention the AU of Casino, a Digital Circus. You also mention another Digital Circus AU, but you get the idea. Each single point of this sort of kind of circle or bubble in specific AU live in this world. And Guardians is the center of everything because they're the one who will basically establish and fix any sort of issues this sort of bubble has, this digital sort of network. But they don't expect something completely different that specific day. Specifically, Pombi, who's the one who basically ripped the internet in half because of her appearance falling down in the sky and landing on the Guardian's territory, the orb of everything. But interesting enough, like always, like the original Pombi, she doesn't remember who she is or where she come from. She just sort of confused till you see every single character of the original Digital Circus, even the ones you don't actually have chance to see, like Cosmo, reappear in this sort of battle form. Each one of them tempted to help Pombi pick her up and trying to beat off the sort of kind of creatures who live in that world, dragging her to the safe house to make sure she's completely safe and allow them to sort of semi-explain everything. What I mean semi, they trying to calm her down. Don't think about it. Let us handle it. Don't worry. You don't need to know anything what's going on. It's not your problem. And that is basically the professional way they actually speak to her. They are truly professional warriors who had to deal with something and quickly finish it off. But they think, oh, we saved here in the safe house. They put it in the special Kane scenario. They call Kane to digit her out of that, so we need to worry anymore. Instead, the guys say, don't worry, if you're fine, this is sort of like a nightmare. This will be over quick and done. But unfortunately, they're sort of surprised that she cannot basically teleport out of her own universe. And this is the thing, Kane is sort of kind of confused. In fact, Kinger, he's the one who's sort of the most aggressive of the group, says, what's going on? You're supposed to do your job. Why you cannot teleport her? And Kane trying to really think about this and realize what is completely wrong with this situation. It's basically she does not have an anchor. It explains this sort of mini manga saying that each specific character of this universe is sort of anchored to one specific AU. But Pombi, this version of Pombi, actually fall into so many different AUs. She sort of fuse her anchors to so many, it evolved it to something completely different, sticking to the Guardians universe AU. She cannot go back because she does not have a sort of a connection to none AUs because she is sort of mixed with all of them. This is the reason why they can not put her a specific place. They even ask her, do you remember what AU she used to be? And she doesn't really remember. She has glimpses, but all the memories is from the other AUs. She doesn't know which one. Now she's sort of stuck to being a guardian and teach her to defend herself and fight sort of the evil creatures who live of this sort of small world of not destroying the whole universe of a AU. Once again, very interesting take, but it really sells that sort of don't worry, we're professionals, and even that you're wondering what's going on, it really intrigues you to see every single character not fully acting as the original characters. Some acted the same, but also showing other characters like Cosmo becoming the character people who think he is, really pulling off that sort of kind of mentor, kind of friend, kind of guy who attempted to help her with Ashley Ragatha doing the same thing, doing like sort of Big Brother kind of vibes. And this is the interesting part because it really does work so well that you just kind of want to know more. Now let's talk about the profile of each specific character. Now, to be fair, each profile is not really a profile, it's sort of a small explanation of each character, but don't have much detail about them, just a very little, and just enough to get what they're trying to especially pull off of that specific character. For example, Poppy, the Jester, that she is sort of could be one of the best warriors in the whole team. The only problem is that she is sort of always too panicking. But in this profile, it does explain, thanks to the team, she is calming down and being more focused. That they believe if the team helped her even more, she would basically balance herself, stop being panicking, and be one of the best warriors in the group. At least assuming to actually figure out how to calm her down. That is just sort of kind of interesting because it is part of her character of originally, and you read the manga of this, it really says that she always panicky, she doesn't know what to do, but the group around her really does care about her, trying to understand who she is, how she works, how her ability works. At least they decide to continue this sort of mini manga. But all of that, now let's talk about the next character on the roster. Now, Ken is a very interesting sort of profile. It's basically kind of being more very up itself because the person who made this profile is Ken. He's just saying, I am the best, the greatest, the only one, the one who actually controlled the whole world, protecting me and help the other group. But that's basically it. It just keeps kind of basically one up himself every single little sentence. He keep adding up. But one thing it does is interesting is the fact this version of Kane, he is basically the host, but he doesn't really have a body. He has sort of a digital body abstracting, but yet really helping other people inside the digital world. But other than that, not much about him. He is sort of the announcer, the host, the one who actually give you info dump every little bit of the day to understand the situation you are really in. And that's basically it. He still acts the same character of the original, but not much different. He just slightly changed designs, but it works better in the manga than actually the profile because they do play with his body parts in the manga. It's just sort of very more interesting, more digital pieces downwards, but yet it still works. Now let's talk about the next character on the roster. Now, Bubble didn't really show up in the manga because it's sort of the beginning. They just show a little bit of each character, but how the sort of profile explains is basically Bubble is basically the best co-worker, the one who actually helps Kane and the rest of the group, whatever they actually need. But that's pretty much it. But we do know she is a menace. Whatever time she have free, she do basically destruction and chaotic things. But that's all it really says. Doesn't go much detail. It just sort of help out any equipment or items or something very specific you need of the moment. But her design is very similar of the original, just sort of slight changes you barely notice. But other than that, I think we should talk about the next character of the roster. Now, Regatha is part of the most sort of changed, at least on design. She still looked the same, but her armor, it really does grab your attention. She has sort of a pillow armor that she can automatically make hard and steel and soft automatically, whatever time she actually chosen. That even that, she is a strong brawler, but her defensive actually does help the team mostly. But also, she is sort of the calm person type who comes to the members wherever time they need sort of a mediator. She always steps in to between the fights or arguments in the team. After that, that's all we know about her of this sort of new sort of profile. Now let's talk about the next character on the roster. Now, this Guardian, specifically Cosmo, is very interesting because the original Digital Circus, you don't know much about Cosmo. The only thing you know, he tried to be funny, and that's it. He abstracted. That's basically it. And decide to run with that idea is that Cosmo, this version, is very similar to Regatha. That he is kind and sweet, but as a jester, he decided to actually make people funny and laugh around him to keep the tension calm and relaxed every time they actually fought. In fact, he is the longest member of the group next to King, who is being the most longest next to Cosmo. Yet his design is so different from the original, he still acts like a clown and punches pretty good. But other than that, that's all we know. Of course, if you want some explanation of some make friends, Cosmo is your friend if you want to know more knowledge. But other than that, that's it. His design is still as a clown, more like a kind of regular punching clown that sort of makes sense for Cosmo, even that we don't know much about him or his routine, but it just sort of makes sense, at least that if you choose to interpret this type of Cosmo of this universe. Now that's basically it. Let's talk about the next character on the roster. Now, the most fascinating change about Kinger this version is basically he's sort of a grunt, a very strong, stoic leader who is very wise and caring, but yet, interesting enough, he doesn't want to be called the leader. He just wants to be called Kinger, who there the longest, he tried his best to make sure everybody live long enough to see tomorrow. And that's basically his goal of being leader of this group. But because being the longest, he actually understood sort of reading people, specifically Kane and people around him, because that's one of his biggest strengths. He can read you automatically, understand your sort of basically point or basically goals to survive this sort of digital world. But I found it fascinating in the manga we read that actually is just more out there sort of action type of guy who take no nonsense to no one. He's very aggressive when he needs to, he's kind when he has to. And that's just sort of interesting because the guy is sort of very hard edge, but he sees someone's kind of failing, he doesn't have control, he becomes soft just for them to keep them calm. And that's just so interesting because it's sort of how the original Kinger really is, but not as aggressive. But it's sort of interesting how they interpret and fit him of this sort of world. Now his design is still the same, but one of the biggest difference, he has a sort of kind of like a knight sort of armor, just sort of his shoulder pads. His hands are completely free with no arms and just one purple kind of coat, or you could say, but black kind of fur. But it just sort of make him that sort of kind of feel like leader, badass, someone who should not mess with them. It just works so well, especially the colors they gave him, that sort of purple color, because only kings or royalty are allowed to wear that specific color. That's why it feels sort of interesting and took so much thought and changes to make this version work so well. Even that, sort of the changes is sort of extreme, but yet it works so well because it's Kinger. It sort of makes sense. He sort of improve or evolve the pit sort of situation they need him the most. Now let's talk about the next character of the roster. Now, Zubo is probably the most easiest to adapt to any store or any AU in any different format because Zubo is just very simple, very quiet, very by herself, but she does care about people around her. They use that same idea in also her design that she can actually adapt in any fight scenario, pick up new weapons, new items, and rechange in her wherever she needs if that point. On top of all this, she is a type of team member that she doesn't ask for much. She usually keeps to herself, but when you need her, she automatically there take down any enemies to help her bestly allies. And that's basically what is about her. Now the sort of changes, I'm not surprised they went this direction because Zubo is super easy to reattach and add new stuff without any explanation because it just works because Zubo is very adaptable any type of story. It sort of makes sense. She has this sort of kind of uniform military look with weapons, armor, and basically bombs around her. It just works super well. I don't know you. There's not much to say about her, but she's not really used that much in the manga because it's sort of short. But you get what you're trying to do. Now let's talk about the next character on the roster. Now, Jack is sort of the most difficult character to be in control in the digital world of the Guardians. He is very useful in battle because he is sort of the explosion expert. But the only problem is he doesn't work well with others. He also violates all the rules set by the Guardians because Jack does his own thing. He actually has so much confidence with the group. But yet, you cannot trust Jack because you don't know what he is thinking or what to do the next thing. He's sort of unpredictable to actually be trusted or used. But be warned, this character is very fantastic now. He is sort of just completely random whatever he wants. But you still tell he does care about the team, but it's his own unique way. Now, his design, Jack, is just sort of interesting. He just sort of works for him. Sort of a ripped blue jeans with a top, with a gray jacket, with hammer and grenades on his arm. That just screams Jack sort of chaotic nature. It really nails it and fits this sort of world of sort of trying to survive, not be killed, sort of kind of end of the world sort of situation, in other words. It just sort of makes sense. He's just one of the few characters just survive this type of world. But other than that, let's talk about the next character on this roster. Now, Gago is probably the most interesting and less character of this roster because in this roster, Ken, who was running each specific sort of essay on explaining who they actually are, is just so scared of her. He doesn't know how to approach it if you read the sort of synopsis of this sort of profile because Ken remembers Gago was part of the most difficult to adapt her sort of scenario because she could not control herself and not stop crying till she actually found her war mask. On top of this, she also found some mannequins to help her in the battle. Because of this, little by little, she started changing, adapting her area, becoming so dominant that she can actually change to offensive, defensive, sort of sniper, guardsman, a blocker, and whichever style of fighting you prefer, she can actually become that. And that's what's so interesting about Gago. She now truly loves being this sort of brute, always empowered and strong, and always helping the others around her. But yet, she is very terrifying. So terrifying, they even can't sort of try not to say nothing mean to her or say anything to offend her because he would be afraid be punched to death by her. Even that, I think even Jax is a tad afraid of her because how strong and brute she really is. Even that, it took a while to finally adapt her surroundings. Even that, her design is just super, I'm gonna say simple at first because they wrap the sort of mask with a sort of kind of mannequin wrapping on her own kind of wrappings around this mannequin, but yet it sort of explains how she controlled this specific mannequin using her own strings like a puppeteer. And that's just sort of interesting that I hope they have different versions of this sort of mannequin to see how Gago controls each specific version of a puppet. But once again, that is her especially, that she can adapt any scenario, depends what kind of puppet she has in the moment. But other than that, that's all I can say. But I have to mention one thing: she is very terrifying. Like, her dominance feels something from a horror scene from, I don't know, Jason or Freddy Krueger, that sort of giant beast that you can't stop. You know, she enjoys beating things, ripping things apart, and could probably be you next if you're not very careful around her. Now, my conclusion of this sort of AU Guardians was sort of a surprise, because I wasn't expected to be this into it, especially the art design, the title of the AU, how they introduce everything. When you start reading at least the manga of it, you get really into it because the art just really grabs your attention. But top of this, how they sort of explain this sort of universe of other universes, lending itself to be in or out other AUs, because it depends of the situation. Even that gives sort of mystery why Pommy is there, why she's the only one cannot remember where she used to be. Also, other asking other questions, like if Pommy doesn't remember what her original AU, the rest are the same, or they're the ones who've been here in the original. Because how the Perfect explains, everybody sort of adapted being in the Guardian AU. Most of them sort of applying, they fell to this core of the AU. So I'm wondering, they have the same story, or the fact they just have the bad ending of the AU, sort of spit it out to land here in the main core. Or it's just another rip of the AU, dropped them here by accident, now have to deal with a new life protecting the core with the Guardians. But this is the thing that makes it so interesting. It is very similar to Reboot and Ryoko. It feels they were learning more about them. The sort of accidental, sort of whatever game they have to best beat of the next villain, had to reset, reanalyze, and see them grow, becoming a better team or a better person. It feels have that vibe of interest, and also that mystery why the rift keep broken in the digital world with other AUs dropping. You also ask this other question: other versions of Pommy, Regatha, Jax, they will drop also. Most of them read different like them. They will like each other or hit each other. And you see this different scenarios this happen. Can they actually have different scenarios to make it more interesting and fun if this sort of kind of AU continues. And that's just sort of interesting. But other than that, how did you like this? Do you enjoy this AU? Did you heard of this version? Tell me down below. Let me know. I got nothing else to say. Just thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and have a wonderful day. Bye.